Coming up, we finally found out what happened to Katie. Join us as we dissect Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Stay tuned.
Katie was never supposed to be found. She was meant to stay buried.
Welcome to the Morgue, where we dissect the latest and greatest in the world of entertainment. And we are your hosts, Arturo Padilla, along with Mr. Nick Valdez. Before we get started, do not forget to hit that subscribe button, that thumbs up, and that bell. That way you know when all these videos are dropping. Tex, how you doing today, dude? What's up?
Howdy, everybody. Howdy, Arturo. We've got a fun one this time. We are unwrapping Lee Cronin's The Mummy. So we have to specifically say Lee Cronin's The Mummy. It's funny because, I guess in this the last month or so ahead of its release, they really started pushing the Lee Cronin part. But I did notice that Arturo pointed out, a little peek under the sheet here, Arturo pointed out that Lee Cronin's The Mummy has been a part of the branding from the entire beginning, since the promotional materials first hit. But I just wrote that off as oh, that's just director credit. That always, but no, it's full on title of the movie, and it's funny because it kind of needs that, for branding reasons, and I'm sure for just trademark reasons and stuff like that too. It's not because Lee Cronin's become such a big director name. We'll get into that here in a bit, but it's because we've had a million versions of The Mummy by now, and it's not there. The Universal is also working on their own version of The Mummy 4 with Brendan Fraser returning. So leading into this, there was a whole I guess it was only really on Twitter and stuff like that, but Blumhouse's official account and the Mummy's official account for weeks kept saying Brendan Fraser is not in The Mummy, which was a weird it was just a weird thing to just point out and be okay. But it's probably because there's been so much consumer kind of misinformation about that of it's a Mummy movie, Brendan Fraser's hot right now, it's obviously going to be a Brendan Fraser Mummy movie. No, they're specifically saying all that, and this is all to set the table for Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Lee Cronin directed films such as The Hole in the Ground, which I still have not seen, but Arturo, you said it was good, right? And then there Evil Dead Rise, which is the most prominent movie, and which will become a lot it's going to become very relevant in our conversation today. So but The Mummy, it's Katie is kidnapped while living in Egypt. Her father's a reporter in the area, her mother's a nurse, I believe it was, and she's suddenly kidnapped and mummified. And 8 months later, or 8 years later, I believe. It's years. It's wild. 8 years later, they mysteriously find her within a sarcophagus and take her back home, and all sorts of wild stuff happens from there. That's pretty much the gist. We're gonna get into full spoilers from here on out, because there's kind of a lot to dig into with The Mummy, and a lot. I guess, Arturo, I'm gonna lead into you first with this question. Just what was your general reaction to this going in?
Well, initially, as you mentioned, Tex, there's a bunch of mummies out there, right? Tom Cruise was in one, Brendan Fraser was in 3 of them, and they definitely had to set themselves apart because this is completely different from any mummy property you've seen. There is a mummy here. We don't get much of a visual mummy throughout the movie. I think that's what people are a little upset about as we take a deeper dive into everything about this movie. But my initial reaction, as you guys remember, when we first saw the trailer, we spoke about it. It had all the creep vibes. It had everything you wanted from a possible horror movie, right? And we got to see it. I was surprised. a bit as to where the story took us. We started in one place and we ended up in a completely different place.
Yeah.
I have some issues with the movie, but overall, I enjoyed it. But that said, there are things in this movie that are kind of polarizing in terms of viewership and what the audience would think. But I like this movie. I think Cronin did a good job with the material because making a mummy movie is not that easy, especially in 2026, where we've seen and gone through a lot of things as a people now. And this day and age, they have gotten a, pun intended, a bad rap, pretty much,
Yeah.
because they're not scary anymore. They're wrapped up in toilet paper or in ribbon or whatever you want to call it. But the visual of a mummy in 2026 is not scary at all.
Yeah.
So Lee Cronin himself had to pretty much write up a whole thing where there is a mummy, but then there isn't too much of a
Right.
mummy.
Right.
And we're definitely gonna get into that because I know Texas is biting.
Well,
It's
yeah,
biting to talk about it.
Yeah, let's start getting into things like fully. Like we fully set up the table at this point. Like it's mummies are goofy, right? Like at this point, you know, we've and for all intents and purposes, all that Brendan Fraser stuff that all the marketing did and all that kind of reminded us the fact that yes, we've seen the mummy a million times already, right? Like we've seen Imhotep, we've seen the full cartoon with the curse and all that stuff. Like we've seen that. And mummies are, like you said, they're the most ridiculed of the universal monsters because usually it's the easiest to beat them in terms of what they do, right? Like in terms of what they're supposed to be, in terms of coming out of a tomb and being like a slow walking mummy monster of like, oh, I'm gonna but with the Frankenstein a little bit. But we've had this discussion when we were talking about like the trailers and stuff. Please go check out the more we talk about the Brendan Fraser mummy and stuff like that, all those updates. But it's more like, you know, what is a mummy, right? Like it's like, is it a monster or is it a ghost? And you put it perfectly where you said it was like it's a folk horror legend, like it's a folk thing, like a cultural kind of monster.
Yeah.
And that's the direction Lee Cronin goes with in terms of, you're right, and like he kind of unfortunately had to reinvent the wheel a little bit in terms of like, yeah, with the mummy, because he had to make a concept to where like you could feasibly say there was a mummy involved, but also he kind of went in this like, he went more into the folklore side of it to ultimately to where it was just kind of like a demonic possession. And in that sense, it's like,
say it. He went the route of what movie?
He did Evil Dead again. Like he like we mentioned Evil Dead Rise was his last movie, and we were like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's going to become relevant later in our conversation. Well, yeah, it's because he basically did another Evil Dead movie, just literally wrapped it in a mummy package. So yeah, so okay. So the mummy here, the demon, like Nazrahim or Nazrahim, something like that. Cool idea. Like it, in terms of like getting all the lore for it, it's interesting, right? Like it's because, but the setup, like there's so much about the fact that he has to make it a mummy movie, but then also probably had an idea for an Evil Dead movie in his head and tried to sandwich them together into like one thing. Because like the mummy stuff, all the investigation, all the like the interesting stuff about it takes place in Egypt, right? Like it's all Egyptian lore, it's all that stuff. But then like the family moves out of Egypt to Albuquerque for like 8 years. And when they discover, like when Katie's discovered within their sarcophagus, there's just like, there's a lot of leaps in logic. And usually like in horror movies, right, there's so much you can forgive, right, to like set things up. You can be like, oh, you know, this is just so it happens so the movie can happen. You know, as part of an audience, we all collectively agree that we're just going to let stuff slide in order to make the entertaining thing happen, right? But here, there's just so much it asks of you, right? Because Katie, she's kidnapped as a little girl. They're in Egypt, and like the guy from Midsommar,
he's gonna be. Listen, we're gonna call him Midsommar all all talk long, so just get used to it.
Yeah, because honestly,
He's acting very
just
Midsummer in this movie too sometimes. So
yeah, like just as a quick aside, he's not really great in this one either.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like what he's expected to do, but we'll get into this, right? This is all like we're still within the Mummy setup, and so their daughter's kidnapped. She like they start this investigation, and then there's like a time skip of like 8 years because they kind of stop, like they jump to a point where like
Yes.
the investigation's gone on long enough to where everybody gives up. The family goes back home to Albuquerque to live with the grandma. It's meant to be like, oh, this kidnapping ruined their lives, right? Like it's meant to be that kind of thing.
Yeah, because he had a whole job offer even when he was in Cairo to like
Right.
be like a reporter, like a TV reporter, like front facing anchor in a New York news thing. And so much so, like Tex mentioned, this whole incident, you see him flash forward and he's back in Albuquerque, just working the board pretty much in a
Yeah.
broadcast show.
And when she's found, they find the sarcophagus, like a plane crashes, sarcophagus is in it. Some like Egyptian kind of paleontologist scientists kind of open it up and started wrapping it, find out there's a girl inside, and then like an Egyptian hospital calls them, and then they go back to Egypt to like see her condition, and then they take her back home, right? And there's just so much about just the setup. It's so weird because it's like it's clearly that he's like, oh, I want to do a mummy movie. Like I have to do a mummy movie. I have to set it in Egypt, but then I also don't have any Egypt-based ideas, right? Where it's like I want to set it in this creepy Albuquerque house because I want to do most of the stuff there.
Like,
but it's like, how did
I'm gonna have to defend that Egypt-based idea thing because he did have the basic Egypt ideas down. I don't know why they went away from there. I was telling Tex off the air, another peek under the sheet here, that I'm a parent. You guys know that. I got a couple of kids of myself. If something this tragic had happened to my family while I was abroad working, I would not step foot outside of that country where my kid disappeared. I would be in that country until they kicked me out, honestly. And this is where we get a couple of those characterization faults that I have issues with as a parent. Like in this investigation, one, they were kind of blamed outright, which was a very interesting angle, honestly. And I wish they would have leaned on it. So once they came forward and they were, and they went to the authorities and they told them what happened, the police, they were like, hey, let's check on them first to see if it was the parents. Because in these situations, the parents usually are the ones, you look at them first. So that was an interesting angle to take. And they didn't really lean on that more. They said it once.
Dropped, right?
Yeah.
It's immediately dropped for the time skip. Yeah.
Yep. They said it once. And then he, Midsummer understands what they're saying. Like, hey, are you blaming us for this? And then they get all worked up. And then 8 years pass. So
yeah, like that's why it's so
it
weird.
Really is kind of frustrating because you had a story there. We start in a very slow burn kind of way. We're in Egypt. We're with Katie. We're seeing how she does her daily routine stuff. She's playing in the garden stuff. She meets this person who's been, you can say, coercing her to try and do the wrong thing. And just feeding her candy behind her parents' back and all this other stuff. Just a bad person trying to do something bad to this kid. And it starts off in this very kind of slow investigative manner. The only real action we get is when the sandstorm hits while he's searching for Katie immediately after she's taken. But we stay in this very kind of slow burn pace throughout the time we're in Cairo. Once we leave Cairo and we jump skip to 8 years, that's what kind of happens to the pace. The movie jumps 8 years and the pace kind of jumps 8 times too, just to get us to where we need to be to understand the concept of what this movie now has become, which is an Evil Dead movie, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it takes so many leaps to get to that point where it's like you kind of get rid of the interesting stuff, right? Like the whole Katie being mummified for 8 years and then like she's found and then they put like they have her in the Cairo hospital, and then somehow let her get to the United States after that. Like
Yeah, I
they're
don't know why they
so
let her
there's
travel, especially
that's what I'm
in her,
saying.
delicate
Like,
state, as the doctor
yeah,
put it,
yes, like I just that's what I'm saying. Like there's so much about it that like I wish the movie were better. I I wish the movie were better so I wouldn't have to be sitting here going, well, how did they do that? Like how did like and once again, Arturo, it brings up all that kind of parental logic that you kind of don't really want to think about, but also you're like, are the parents supposed to be kind of, and then that's the thing too. Like, it would help if like Midsommar and and the mother are like, it would help if they were kind of complicated, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a
like
great point.
the you get the whole sense that by the end that the father like it's his redemption story. His daughter's kidnapped because he's focused on his job, but then it's not really framed like that either, right? Because when
Correct.
she's just kidnapped, right?
Yeah, like,
And
I wouldn't personally blame him for that because Katie has a habit of playing in her garden, and
yeah,
even when the mom is around, they don't know that all the way at the end of the garden, this fence or cage, whatever, has been
right.
compromised and all that stuff. So, like, pointing the blame, excuse me, pointing the blame directly at the father at Midsummer, I thought was very like unfair, especially once Katie gets to America and then like they they have this kind of argument about what to do with Katie, because it's like,
Right.
hey, she's obviously not
But
okay,
that's the thing is he's not characterized that way either. He's not
exactly, he's not.
characterized. He's not playing up being like an absentee father focused on work. Like he literally like it'd be different if the 8-year time skip saw him working as an anchor in New York, right?
Yeah,
Like doing his dream job and just being like, oh, and then when Katie comes back, oh, his dreams are shattered kind of moment. No, like the parents have one fight about this, like in the middle of the movie, where it's like, oh, it's you're blaming me,
yeah, it's
but
like, oh,
then
you blame me for this, don't you? You've been blaming me for 8 years and blah blah.
and
And in
we
my
didn't
head, I'm like,
yes, we didn't see any of this.
why
Yes,
is
that
this
is
fight happening? You like, especially as parents who just got their daughter back, right?
yeah,
Like, why are you guys in this quarrel right now? Because there was no instance where he would have prevented that from happening.
right.
If you see the movie out there, buddies, and you go watch The Mummy, and you see the first act of the movie, you'll clearly see it's like, oh, no, he didn't neglect her. He wasn't saying, "Oh, Katie, just be quiet, go play while I'm working" or something. No, he was
No,
daily life, you know?
yeah, and this is why when you get to the payoff, like the payoff is ultimately this is where it's going to divide some people. Like so about like 3/4 of the movie. This is like a 2 hour and a half, like 2 hour and 15
Yeah.
minute movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I bet you definitely feel that. The thing is, what's funny about this and what's funny about the burn, like, is that I really liked the buildup. Like, I liked everything that was going on with the digging into the mummy, even though, like I said, like I was just complaining about all the like the leaps in logic and stuff like that. I liked figuring out what this thing is, even though when you break it down in retrospect, you're like, oh, it's a little bit clunky because it's like they have these Egyptian paleontologists, archaeologists, whatever, unwrapping the mummy. And then you have these Egyptian doctors, and then there's like a one random professor in Albuquerque that like the dad goes to, where it's like, and you also like throughout this entire story, you also have, like Arturo mentioned, the police who originally interact with them. You have one character who's like advancing her career to the point where like this is her job now, and she's once again from Egypt. So it's like you have all these ties to the region, but then like you're forcing them into Albuquerque. You're forcing them into, let's get into it, the Evil Dead format. When we
Yeah.
finally get Katie doing what she's going to do, and you finally get the full demon kind of sprouting out that you see in the trailers and stuff like that, not really mummy. It really is just like exorcist kind of like dead eye, like, oh, a little girl's gonna say wrong, like evil stuff, but then like not really. So it doesn't really like it's not going that far in terms of what she's saying, right? She's saying like, "Oh, his family hates you. You're all going to kill each other," and it's
Well,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
like
cool.
so.
Like,
So a little background on the demon. The demon is supposed to like the main purpose of that demon is to tear families apart bit by
very
bit,
Deadite. Yeah,
one
very
by one
Deadite.
kind of thing. But like I do have to say though, we did get a little bit of that mummy stuff before the Deadite action actually started. So Katie was entombed for 8 years, and wrapped around her were these shrouds. And on these shrouds were ancient Egyptian like text and scripture and stuff. And pretty
Hmm.
much these shrouds were supposed to keep the demon in, right? And slowly, because the mother doesn't know any better, right?
Right.
When she's, cutting her toenails and stuff, a piece of skin rips off, which is pretty gnarly. But like wrapped around her entire body were these scriptures that were supposed to bind the demon in. So technically, in terms of mummy stuff, we do get some unwrappings here and there, and it is essential for this demon. So this demon is conjured not via deadite, fashion, via a book, but it's conjured as the shrouds are taken off
Yeah.
bit by bit.
Funny
So
enough,
that
even
that I
yeah,
think is the most we get of mummy shrouded action, honestly, and the reason
right.
for the shrouds. But yeah,
It once again, Evil Dead references. There's a tape playing explaining the demon. There's like then we get a whole VHS setup. So once again, this is another thing of like Egypt versus America, right? Where it's like I'm okay with the VHS stuff being in Egypt because it's like, oh, technology's not moving this fast, whatever, et cetera, right? But then like you have a VHS player at your house. It's it's once again, this is all just stuff where I'm like, cool idea that it's forced to fit into this mummy
well,
mold,
remember, like,
and that's
also, like, listen, I'm playing devil's advocate here, okay? So,
right.
I actually like this movie, and I think there are explanations to certain things. I definitely understand the gripe that is being thrown out there in terms of the tonal shift in the movie. I
Yeah, we didn't even get to that yet.
I
Yeah,
felt
like
it
this.
too.
Yeah, yeah,
We're slowly getting to that as we started with the slow pace, and now we're in the Evil Dead portion of the movie. But in terms of the VHS tape, remember these people are living back with their mother-in-law and their mother. So this woman probably has some old tech around. You know what I
right.
mean?
But this is
Um,
what I'm saying. It's just I wish it were better so that I wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Where it's like I wouldn't care. Like this is the stuff the movie forces me to care
I didn't
about
care too
because
much about the VCR and the
yeah,
USA thing.
it's just
That
okay.
didn't bother me
So
at all.
yeah, let's get into the Deadite stuff. So when she's full mummy, like she's full, like when Katie goes full demon, it's full on Deadite stuff. It's she possesses like the sister and the brother, and like the sister, like there's this whole thing about like the grandmother having fake teeth, and they kind of allude to that several times throughout the movie before the payoff, which is like because then when you finally get the teeth moment, the little girl's ripping out her teeth to put the fake teeth in. Cool ultimate visual, right? Like cool end visual, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, did you need to pay it off with several teeth alluding gag? Like it's, but okay.
Well,
I
like I
don't,
think that honestly, again, a devil's advocate here. That teeth eluding gag though was I think more to serve as the evidence the mom needed to know that Katie was dangerous. Because remember when the grandma, by the way, the grandma gets it the worst out of
yeah,
everybody in this movie. So
it's probably
once
best scene in the movie. Yeah.
yes, once Katie takes care of this grandma, like there's a cool death scene for the grandma where she's thrown out the window and then she's eaten up by coyotes. But after this happens, her her fake teeth end up underneath the bed. And this is how the mom knows that Katie was lying about like, not lying, but Katie was responsible for what happened to her mother. So I think that's why they mentioned the fake teeth and the dentures and stuff like that because of that moment where you see, oh snap, her dentures are under the bed. That means something other than what they thought would happen because they thought she threw herself out the window. You know what I mean? So her having her teeth underneath the bed shows that there was some kind of struggle, some kind of like impact or force that happened there. So that I think that denture gimmick, I think, was a little bit more to serve for the evidence. And then, yeah, obviously you get the thing at the end in the funeral where Katie's little sister unbinds the grandma's mouth, during the wake of the funeral, whatever, and then her mouth opens up, and then she takes her dentures and stuff. But I do think
it does suck that the funeral, cool setup, because I thought we were getting something bigger than what we
yes,
got with the
agreed,
funeral, right? Because
agreed.
they have the wake inside the house. Unfortunately, that is the one thing that makes a ton of sense in this movie, right? Like, where I'm like, I didn't really question the logic of holding the wake in the grandmother's house, right?
No, it
It's like,
happens.
oh,
Some
okay,
people do
yeah,
that.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, it makes a ton of sense. But also, I was like, okay, it's clearly building to like it. Katie kind of escaping. It's building to that, right? You see the little sister doing, like, she's pulling her teeth out little by little. Everything's getting more sinister. The floors are starting to rot because of the mummy stuff, the mummy goo, right? And you're like,
mummy
okay,
vomit.
cool. And this is going to, because I thought it was going to be like, here's our big set piece of like, we're gonna lose. Like, this is a great way to just kind of up the body count or up the terror, right?
Yeah,
But instead, it's played like it's still gross because Katie does come down from the roof and kind of chew and drink the embalming liquid from a corpse. It's a wicked idea. Once again, cool Evil Dead stuff, right? You're just like, in my head, like, I just could not get that out, where I'm like, you should have just made another Evil Dead movie. Like, you should have just done Evil Dead Burn instead of the whole like giving it to other up and coming directors and stuff. Cool, like, I'm glad we're gonna get that, but it's like, it's clear Cronin had these ideas because these are wicked moments, right? Like, the grandmother's death in particular, she gets she gets hung by her own rosary, and that's cool stuff.
yeah.
And when she flies through the window, you see a cross laid out in the window frame when it's broken through, and you're like, this is cool stuff. This is great wicked imagery. Like the little sister with the dentures in her mouth and the blood, cool imagery. But then also, that's all we get from it, Arturo. Like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna be Evil Dead, like, okay, grandma's corpse comes back alive. She starts doing the Evil Dead thing of like, oh, I'm gonna do sexual stuff to you, and you're like, oh, and this is the tone change Arturo was talking about. Like, in the climax, right? She's like, I can't wait to do whatever, and you're like, you're like, oh, this is where we're at. Oh,
Yeah,
you're like,
listen.
oh, it's full Evil Dead. And I'm like, this is
Yes,
cool,
it's full
but
Evil Dead, but again, Tex, like, devil's advocate here. Again, like, it's a demonic possession movie, dude. Like, that's
right.
what happens in these movies. Like, yes,
Yes.
we can bring Evil Dead to the forefront for all these kinds of, comparisons and stuff. But if you go back to The Exorcist, bro, like, Reagan was doing crazy, Deadite
but
stuff even back then, before
but
Deadites were a thing, you know?
is that the Mummy? You know what I
But
mean? Like,
it's
yeah.
it's the only way to interpret that monster in 2026, dude. Like, that
Yeah.
is the only
Yeah.
way. That's why I had no problem with this movie, because I couldn't figure out another way to see a mummy. We've seen the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, we've seen the Brendan Fraser ones, and they did their thing, and they have a certain look to them. The Brendan Fraser one specifically is more of a blockbuster action movie than it is a horror movie. Yes, we
Right.
do get elements of monsters in here, and Emotep first starting out as a skeleton and then regenerating and all that stuff is very cool, but like, we can't do that anymore. It's not effective. If somebody wrote that now, you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. So
Yeah.
I understand. I totally
Yes.
understand where you are coming from, but I don't know how else this would have been done otherwise.
And that's also the unfortunate thing about this, Arturo. I think, like, it's an uphill battle to climb, and people aren't going to be happy with it, because that's
But
the thing.
again,
It's
like,
like,
people don't understand folk horror, like mummy stuff.
yeah,
Dude, I said it in our last conversation about the mummy when we got our final trailer. Mummy stuff is folk horror. Like, a
right.
folk horror is a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? And on top of that, it's very polarizing. You have very good folk horror, you have very bad folk horror, you have very folk. You have very folk horror that's in the middle, very boring stuff. But it's Mummy is folk horror. The way you do this right is doing it the way Cronin was doing it. I don't know if he had to have gone that extreme.
Yeah.
I think he would have made his point still without having to go complete deadite. I do agree with that because, as Tex was saying earlier, we did have a very competent, very good movie in the first act and a half, right?
Yeah.
When we're actually like trying to figure out what happened to Katie, like how the parents are going to figure this out, how are they going to live their lives? That was super interesting, especially because it was legit a mystery that you can actually be involved in as the audience, as a Midsummer himself goes to this professor or that professor. At least if you're going to take us to America, keep us more like tangled into the investigative thing, right?
I think it's what it is, because it's so split in its focus.
And then on top of that, Tex, like you said too, we have the Egyptian police officer doing that work in Egypt, right?
Yes,
what we wanted to see, he was doing more of, but off screen. I wish we definitely spent a lot more time in Egypt with her.
Yeah, this is why I think this is why like I'm so stuck on the whole. Why did you even move it to the United States? So you could have. This is why I feel like it's an Evil Dead. This is why it's an Evil Dead idea. Like I can't get that out of my head. Stuck within a Mummy format. You know what I mean? Where it's like the interesting stuff once again is everything that happened to Egypt, everything related to Egypt, everything related to the Mummy. But everything else I was not a fan of, especially like it's the tonal shift where I didn't like. It's the because suddenly it goes from being like creepy and slow burny to being like full active, like here's a dead grandma corpse talking about doing sex stuff, and you're like, oh, this is why I was a little disappointed, because it, like you said, it seems so it seems so different before that. This is a weird case where, like, I know I've said before, is like you got to have a good payoff to like pay off your build, but this is one of those cases where it's like arguably it does have a good payoff, but it just wasn't a payoff that I liked. Like it wasn't one that I totally gelled with for the movie that I was into beforehand. And I was into the Mummy part. Like I was into the Mummy lore itself. And ultimately, when you get to the stuff that it feels like so non-Mummy towards the end, and you even have like you have like an Egyptian witch kind of element to it, and that's cool, right? It's got cool stuff there.
That's the folk horror of it all.
Yes, that's
this
cool.
Is why I don't understand why we moved back to Albuquerque. It didn't really do anything extra for it. You could have done all this back in Egypt, and then on top of that, I think it would have had a bigger effect because we're still in Egypt, and not in freaking New Mexico.
Yeah,
so I definitely get it.
So out of their depth, right? Like put these parents through the ringer. Like it, and it's the 8-year time skip too, where it's like yes, I kind of agree, where it's like I wouldn't put so much on like a super young actress's shoulders, right? Because I don't think there's any faults in her performance. I don't think she had to be a demonically possessed kid, right? Like, but we've seen worse and we've seen better examples, right? Like this one is like she was good for what she had to do.
Yeah, but also I feel that they didn't give her enough to do. Being the one that
also it too. Yes.
She was like the main possessor. She was the demon.
Yes.
But then they had to play around with the fact that she was bedridden, quote unquote, and and they didn't know any better. So it gets very complicated, but I do agree with you, Tex. I do agree that she did a good job, but I feel that she wasn't given enough to do, honestly.
And that's the thing. Like that's kind of the characterization problem at the core of this whole movie too, where it's like, because the father, okay, so quick getting into the end of this conversation here, so the father, like the whole thing about beating the demon, it's like, oh, it needs a new vessel, right? And and he sacrifices himself for her and like gets the vessel put in him. Classic absentee father kind of ending, right? Making up for That's what it is. And
Yeah, yeah,
it's
it's
the
true.
I'm making up for all my past troubles with her for doing her wrong and getting her stuck in this in the first place. I'm going to give up, classic absentee father, coming to the error of his ways, realizing that stuff. But he's not characterized that way. He's not, we're told that this is like the vibe is like, oh, and then you get like a happy ending at the end, which once sees them once again going to Egypt, like when he's fully possessed in the mummy, and it's like, oh,
How do you get a plane, first of all? That's
how
my
did
question.
it makes you think of that question again of like, well, how did she get over to the United States? And now you're like, well, how did he get back over there? And it's kind of like, oh, you're literally bending yourself over backwards to make
Yeah,
this ending.
at that point, you just got to be like, whatever, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're at the end. So
yeah, and speaking of the end, Arturo, I don't think there's a better way to put that. How we do things here at the Morgue, we have our rating system of pay for it, which is go out to the theaters and go check it out as soon as possible, or buy the digital copy as soon as you can, see it as soon as possible. There's wait for it, which is, oh, you don't need to see it right away. You can wait a weekend. You can wait till it's more convenient for you. You're not missing much. And then there's stay away from it, which is the more self-explanatory thing of like, oh, you don't need to see it. So on a scale, pay for it, or stay away from it. I'll lead with it first. Because I feel like I'm going to be the more negative of the two. So I want to.
I mean, you have been the more negative of the two in the conversation.
Yeah. So like, I'm going to say wait for it in terms of like, honestly, the more I talk about it, the more like I sit with it, the more I'm like, there's stuff that actually bothered me in retrospect. Like it's almost stay away from it, but also I don't think it's like enough for me to like as objectively as I can say this, it's not a total stinker, right? Like because ultimately I did like a lot of it. I liked, and when I was in the theater, I was like, oh, I was entertained up until like it turns into a completely different movie and like try to sell itself as a different movie. And I think that's where I'm at. So Arturo, on our scale, pay for it, wait for it, stay away from that. What say you?
I'm gonna have to go with a soft pay for it. I think based on the landscape of horror, and what we've gotten recently and what we've gotten in the past, I think this fits just nicely into the landscape of things that are actually positive. We've seen a heck of a lot worse horror movies in theaters. I've seen a heck of a lot worse folk horror movies. I've seen garbage folk horror movies, and
You have.
listen, folk horror is one of my favorite genres. Folk horror and religious horror are two of my favorite subgenres in horror, and I really love those subgenres. I always find something to grasp onto. I've seen folk horror that is just tough to get through because it's so just slow paced and the
Yeah.
payoff is not worth it. This one, I think, because we get the action, because we get the awesome gnarly visuals at the end, it is a different movie by the time you hit hour 2, for sure. But by that point, I think it just works for the story. We can say all we want that we wanted a slower paced movie, stuck in Egypt and all this stuff, but we don't know what that would ultimately have looked like. So what we got, I think, was actually pretty good. It's not great by any means. It's no real Evil Dead movie because Evil Dead has a different pace altogether, but it is in the fashion of an Evil Dead story, honestly, because of what happens at the end and the speed that everything happens at the end. But I really did like this movie. I did see some positive things here. But I did speak to Tex afterwards, peek under the sheet again, that I did have issues with the characters. And the tone shift, I get it, but it didn't bother me as much. I was in it, especially after the grandma, leapt to her final stage of life. I was like, yo, I'm in it to win it after that because everything just picks up after that. One thing I wish would have happened more in the vein of Evil Dead is the brother and sister. I wish they were more effective and impactful. They were just a nuisance, honestly. So I think that fell flat in terms of the Evil Dead standard there. But all that said, I did enjoy my time in the theater watching this movie. Do I wish we've gotten a different story? Of course, of course. But again, mummies are incredibly difficult to really put on screen because of their nature, because of the way they look, because of how they've been treated in Hollywood all throughout. But all that said, buddies at home, please let us know down in the comments what you thought of Evil Dead Mummy, or I should say, or I should say, Lee Cronin's The Mummy. But let us know in the comments down below whether you thought it was bad, whether it was good, whether it did remind you of Evil Dead, and would you have liked to see something else from Lee Cronin? Thank you so much for listening. This has been The Morgue, where we dissect the latest and greatest in the world of entertainment. We are your hosts, Arturo Padilla, along with Mr. Nick Valdez. A big shout out goes to you guys out there for listening and for watching. We have all these episodes up on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast streams. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Hit that thumbs up, hit that bell, leave us some 5-star reviews. We would highly appreciate it. A big shout out goes to Del Barris for all the artwork you've seen in front of you throughout the years. And last but not least, folks, it is a scary world out there, especially in Cairo, but we are here to walk you through it.